Hello, and welcome to Hospice Insights, the law and beyond, where we connect you to what matters in the ever-changing world of hospice and palliative care. Endings and beginnings. Reflections on Meg Pekarske's 25-plus years as a hospice advocate. So, Meg, this seems strange. I'm the first one talking in one of these podcasts. This is going to take some getting used to. What's it like to be the second one talking in a podcast?
I don't know. It seems fun. I don't need to be in charge.
Well, you've been such a steady voice leading the hospice team and our group. And we know from your recent podcasts that you're turning the page, going into the next chapter, and you're certainly going to be missed by those of us here at Husch Blackwell, by the hospice community overall. And so I thought in this podcast going forward, what better first guest to have than you, who have built so much on our team and really has been a real asset to the hospice community. So thank you for all that.
Well, Brian, thanks for having me. And so as we release this will be the first one you're doing, and the second one that's talking about me in endings kind of way. And so I'm glad you pulled that thread through. And I don't know if I said in the last podcast that I was officially retiring, but I am officially retiring as of March 31st from law, not like life, but law stuff. So I think it's different than I thought it might be. I don't know. I mean,
how so? What did you expect?
Well, I think I knew that from a early on, I mean, at least 10 plus years ago, and Brian, because you and I have worked together so long, maybe you remember with that stellar memory hanging on all my words, but I knew that there's something else I'm supposed to do in my life, and not just this, and it's not to take anything away from this, but I knew for a long time that this wasn't what I was supposed to do for the rest of my active life. And so, I aggressively saved a lot of money and all this stuff. And so I'm very grateful to my former self to have listened to that voice inside, or whatever you want to call it, because it's not running away from something. So it feels like I've been thinking about this for a long time, and it's sort of a goal that you're reaching. So in terms of how it feels, I don't want to say uneventful because it's not uneventful, but I think everyone's asked oh, this is so exciting. And it is exciting, but I feel like in a quiet way. And I'm coming off, a year of that I shared in the other podcast about my mom getting sick and dying. And so there's been a lot of loss and it feels like a very transition point in my life in many, many different ways. So I think it's a setting something down that's been very heavy. So it feels like freedom, but freedom doesn't feel like this emotion of oh my God, most people will ask me, oh, so what trip are you taking or doing? And it feels like I am craving really the simple things. Like today, and as you know, Brian, we're nearly in a polar vortex here. It's super below zero and going to be 40 below zero on Friday. And
the high on Friday is -8. So I've been commiserating with people about from our colleagues in Texas and South where, they're dealing with 40 or 50 or 60 degrees. Yeah. Try -8 as a high.
I know. And then with wind chill, it's -40. So it's literally 100 degrees warmer there. So, but and it's snowing a lot I mean, a lot in total, but like a little bit every day. And so, like, taking joy in someone was like snow plowed for me today, like snow blew. So you didn't like these little surprises. And then
Yeah.
I like ordered several months ago this olive oil and stuff from Greece that now is just arriving. And it's like these simple pleasures. It's not like big things. And like, I don't know. I just feel that I'm much more open to be able to take in the world. So, as you can see, I'm sort of a philosophical, reflective kind of person. So,
Yeah. Well,
but
one word you used was freedom, and I know I talk with my kids a lot about freedom and how you get freedom, and hard work. You mentioned saving aggressively. When I talk with my kids, good grades. Put yourself in a position to have all these options for you to take your life in a different direction. And I think people lose sight of the fact that they can try to build today freedom and options in the future and then take advantage of them. So I think it's just a wonderful example that you're not your job in the moment. You are a different person separate from that, and you have other interests. And if you build up that freedom, then you're able to explore all of that. So I think it's a real great example.
yeah, and I think freedom, because I had an executive coach for Alistair for a really long time. I mean, probably close to 10 years. Um, and it's like we have freedom, but if you don't exercise it, right, it's like not having it. And why do we not exercise freedom? It's oftentimes fear, right? Like
You're
fear
comfortable
of
with
the
what you
unknown.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you can't be something new. You have to let go. You can't, like, I don't believe in this whole you can have it all, do it all kind of um mindset. I mean, and I think there's different like seasons and phases of life. I mean, I'm so glad that I did this. I mean, I've met amazing people. I've learned so many awesome life skills. Very I feel like I was really challenged and I grew as a person. I mean, there's so much that this job has given me, but it feels very time to let that go. And why not like Michael Jordan, except I'm not coming back. I'm not
you're,
gonna try baseball,
you're not going
right? Or
to you're not going to pop up in Charlotte with the
no,
new
I'm not
hospice
gonna be doing
practice.
that. Um, like of just like leaving on top instead of and like we had a great year this year as a team and it just and a lot of momentum going into this year, but it is really about um I think being aware though that these are endings and you've been working with me and as I'm transitioning the practice and this has been going on for some time and just it's this has been almost like a death in the sense that and that's why the subject of my prior podcast was endings like because I was helping you all with business planning or sharing my thoughts on that. And it's sort of like planning for something that you're not going to be around for is a very interesting and odd experience.
Yeah.
And to not see it as such is, I think, missing the point. And so I think I've been paying attention to all of this stuff. And it's very interesting. And it feels very different than how, as I said, I thought it would um, feel. And so I think that's sort of cool. I like to be surprised.
Yeah. Well, great. And I think, the whatever you pursue, Meg, I know just your personality, it's going to be pursued to the hilt to make you a more complete person. You're always interested. You're so curious. I think that's one of the things that you have said was a real value to you in being a lawyer and growing as a lawyer and growing the practice, this sense of curiosity and interest in other people. And that's what as you're kind of going into retirement, which is not it's going to be an active retirement, whatever you pursue, trying to look back on some of the successes. And I thought this would be a good moment for you to look back on your work as an attorney and your work in the hospice area and share with folks, did you see as the keys to success in building your practice? But then what were those hospices and those hospice leaders? What kind of characteristics did they have that made them successful in all of that? And just try to get the insight of your 25 years into that. Why don't we start with just how you built the practice? What made the hospice team that you've led for this long really become a successful operation to the benefit of a lot of hospices and related areas?
Well, every hospice story starts with like kindness and good people, because I came to this work as a 25-year-old out of law school, but I found my way here because and this is the story of most of my life. I feel like I'm attracted to certain people who are good people. And so when I started my law practice, I had two amazing mentors. Mary Michael, who had just started at our firm after running hospice care for 6 years, I think it was. She had left her previous law practice after volunteering at hospice, then became the CEO of hospice care, which is now called the Grace. She comes back to private practice and has this radical idea in 2000, not 2020, 2000, too many twos there, or zeros. 2000, saying, I now want to help hospices as a lawyer. And back then, I mean, I don't know if there were 1,500 hospices in the country. It was very small business. I mean, it was still where you had like volunteer medical directors. That wasn't like completely insane. um, and Mary was, and she still is, because we connect, and there's something that is going to connect all this stuff. But so she was like authentic and real, um, and so I learned from her. And then I had another great mentor, Bert Wagner, who passed away about 2 years ago, who was fabulous. And I had people who really cared about me. And so I think like I could have done a lot of things in my life, but I followed people who were kind and generous and authentic and really, I think, passionate about what they did. And I think like passion for what you do is contagious. And so then Mary too, I mean, I'm 51. Mary was probably 60 when she retired and wanted to do different stuff. And so I'm like sort of a pretty young lawyer. And a couple of years before that, I had to make a decision if I wanted to just do hospice or do the mix of what I was doing, which was long-term care and hospice, which I was doing the long-term care work with Bird. And I chose hospice stuff, even though I was very scared to do it, just because it has always been a national practice. So it's sort of a practice without borders. Um, and going to these conferences, it's like, and this is before Zoom and all this stuff, where you don't know what your clients look like because all you do is talk to them on the phone. And the conferences back in the day, like NHPCO, um, there were, thousands of people there, and it's like, who am I? And I mean, so there was a lot of fear and of like, if I can do this. And then I was just like, okay. And it was the best decision I could have made for my legal career, but it wasn't without a lot of fear. So I think I've talked to our team about this, is like, I want to be a person that does things that are difficult. And I think that doing things that are difficult, and I think you need to have passion, and the passion can't be about money. it has to come from something else, because I think that that's got to be the engine. And so I think that that's so kindness has really, and generosity and authenticity is something that I feel like has become like a buzzword in leadership. But I think that hospice has had a lot of those leaders historically in their roots, because we had CEOs that were social workers
Yeah.
and chaplains. And so
Mhm.
that's not usually the CV of a healthcare executive, is coming from that perspective. And so I think that that compassion and connection to people is, I think, especially as we think about AI and what technology can do, and then what is the work of humans. And I think, like, you know, emotional intelligence has become more important than ever. So I think, like, connecting with people is really important, has been important to building our practice and our team, because we have a really big team now. And that comes from, like, you got to be able to, attract people to, and I feel like people can tell if it's authentic or not. And so I think those are, I learned from people who mentored me, those leadership skills are important, how people make you feel. And then I've also gotten that from clients who I think still have those similar values of kindness, and then passion and enthusiasm for what they do. And then, obviously being smart and relentless and, all those other sort of boring things. But I think living that.
Yeah, I think what you said, the boring things, those are kind of the foundation for any really good attorney. But you and I started working maybe 15 years ago, and I came from a different, very different kind of practice. It was administrative, but different kinds of clients and different, ways of thinking about business. And when I started working with you with hospices, I could see that it's a kind of client that you can get passionate about because they're passionate about it. They're very mission driven, and I think as our team has grown, uh, we have attracted other attorneys who have that passion for hospice. It seems a lot of our folks on the team, they have their hospice story, some interaction with hospice that was very meaningful to them or a family member, and we're often sharing that, and even with clients. But, yeah, I have found the hospice people to be just really good people to work with because they're mission driven, they're about the people and the patients, and the way that Meg, you were able to kinda match that, and you had that same drive, I think was a way that, attracted hospices to you, but then attracted all other attorneys to the kinds of things you were doing. Um, I'm thinking I used to watch Parks and Rec when that was on. I don't know if
Oh,
you
yeah.
used to watch that too, Meg, but
Yeah.
I remember at the very end, Leslie Knope, she was given at the final episode giving some graduation speech. She was some politician and she said some inspirational words, and then her final words was "Go find your team." And I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
kind of think of that about, yeah, find the people who are going to share your values, have this need for compassion and excellence and passion about what you do, and yeah, I think that's kind of what you have been able to build, and really is the core of the success here. So, mm,
Yeah. And I think that obviously, as a leader, you make missteps. And my need, especially, I think early on in my career, like, this need to control, because all that stems from insecurity, right? Is like, oh, I need to be involved in everything and everything's on me and all this sort of, that's hard to let go. And I think as I was able to let go of that, um, things really blossomed. Like, so to loosen the reins, so to speak, and trust, people, and And I think it's really important to be reflective, I think, as a leader. Um, Susan Cain wrote this book on quiet, and it talks about introverts and introverts as leaders because our image of leadership is an extrovert, I think. Like just TV, media, there's
The
just a
alpha,
command.
the
Yeah.
alpha personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is and I think that, and I'm not saying extroverts aren't reflective, but I think this idea that she talks about in her book about, you know, you have to find a way to get the same things done that the extrovert needs to do. I remember her talking about like this one CEO of this big company. I mean, he would write a personal note every year to every employee, which was like a ton. And everyone had a note for, you know, from him. And like finding your own way to do that, regardless of, um, even if you're not the person that wants to take center stage. I mean, so there's different ways to be leaders. And I think understanding that is important. And so some people might think I'm an extrovert. I think and there I saw something that there's a new term like the outrovert. So it's like I can, if I'm enthusiastic about what I'm doing, like I'm excited about this. I mean, talk to me about like art and design and color and things that make me excited. Like I can be on, but if like the conversation is boring and like transactional or whatever, like it's harder and that's draining for me. And so
Yeah.
I think like I'm a mix of both, but I think a real strength is I do think I'm a reflective person uh, in a productive way. I mean, not just like excessive rumination about all the ways I've screwed up, but like, who am I? What are my values? How do I live my values every day? What is important to me? Those kinds of things, having a life philosophy, I think provides some structure for all the stuff that you're doing and having clarity around that. And so I think that also someone who is reflective on themselves, because I think, and I know I've said this to you 100 times, Brian, is I feel like all of your weaknesses are magnified when you manage people. And so if you don't know your own blind spots, like then it just, and so I feel like I learned so much by doing this job because I do think I'm naturally reflective. And when things don't work out, like, why did that not work out? And what are the deeper issues? And I realized, like, I had a lot of insecurity, like, I'm not good enough, all this other stuff that then made me like be too tense and
Yeah.
too, like, you know, too micromanaging and all this stuff. So I think that's really important as a leadership skill too.
Yeah, I think kind of the lawyer mind is they train you to be paranoid, I believe, and you're always trying to anticipate everything and prepare for it. And to do that, you have to know everything. And so I
Yes.
think it's a leap from that kind of training you get as an attorney early on to taking on leadership positions and letting go of that.
Yeah.
But as our team has grown, you've had to do that. I've had to do that. It's, find your team. Who can you trust? Who's reliable? And kind of be the mentor that you had. I remember Mary and Bert; they were great folks, and I just hope you and I have been mentors to folks on our team now, as good as they were mentors to you. And so something that strikes me about the hospice, just I think you and I have talked also about. It seems every 5 years, your practice is different. What you were doing now is different from 5 years ago and 5 years before that. Just the adaptability of trying to keep up with all the changes. It keeps things very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I think again, where reflection comes in is, I mean, part of that's reacting to like what people need, right? But also thinking about, well, what do people need in the coming years, right? And so when we moved to Hush now 6 years ago, um, I really wanted to build up more of a corporate presence because there's just a lot I could see happening and more to come in combinations and restructurings, and especially a lot in the not for profit space. Um, and it's like, if I want to be like, how can I be of service to my clients? Like, I need to build more skills on my team that I personally don't have. And that's, again, a real growing thing is like, I'm a regulatory attorney by training. And so like, I'm not a corporate lawyer. And so like, knowing that that's the need and then beginning to build that. And now, I mean, we have over the last like 6 years, I mean, now we've had almost, it was like $800,000 worth of work that's corporate that like 6 years ago I wasn't doing. And part of
Yeah.
that's market, but also it's also intentionally building these skill sets on your team to like, because you're looking at what's in front of you. Because to to be the leader, you can't be the doer too. And so I think like you have to let go of things, and that was also sort of hard thinking like, well, but I am the doer, and like you get very comfortable in the doing, and then you also think, well, but clients want me to do all the doing. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think our practice, we had almost 15,000 hours of work last year on our team. Well, obviously, I am one human. I mean, if you want to build something bigger than yourself, you have to let go. You have to do what other people aren't going to do, which is sort of the forward thinking and all that stuff. So that's been fun. I think we were building up for like the carve into Medicare Advantage and like
Yeah.
building more managed care experience. And so, now who knows where that's going to go. But just, and I think that that's sort of fun. I've enjoyed doing that. But again, all of this stuff, the theme is you have to let go of things in order to grow, right? And so letting go of some of the doing and like seeing your value. And also, I've always, it's been really important to be a good financial steward of our clients' resources. So it's like having me or you do everything isn't good when we have very capable people who are, in many respects, probably more efficient than we are in many of these tasks, just, whatever. But their billing rate, it's like people want your vision and your management, and you're going to make sure everything gets done. But and so I think realizing what your value is, and so I think a real blossoming for me was actually seeing that I have skills and gifts, and like I deserve to be in the room, and I didn't have to like hide behind competence all the time because thought I was too insignificant. Is like, when you accept your own gifts, then I think that it allows you to then live those in the world. But
Mhm.
also, I think you're a better person to be around because if you don't accept your own gifts, then I think then you can be harder on other people and be like, well, why can't you do this? I can do
Yeah.
this. And it's like, well, but they have different skills and gifts. And I also think you really need a diverse team. And again, that's sort of a buzz thing now, but I think that it's critical and diverse in every way in terms of different strengths. And that, I mean, you talked about curiosity and where that like plays into. I'm really curious about people, and I really enjoy people. I enjoy getting to know them, and it's much more interesting to when you have a diverse team of people with a lot of different backgrounds, like to learn about them. And then like, obviously that creates some cohesion and stickiness, but it's also just way more interesting. And it's like, who wants a bunch of Megs on their team, right? They're, I mean, so
Well, yeah, you have to have all that different perspective. If you don't, like the way you've kind of you built this from the ground up, and each new attorney that comes on, you're elevating your game. If you weren't embracing that, we wouldn't have a team of like a dozen core attorneys, and then beyond that, dozens of others who are in supporting roles. It would be you and me, working on 2 audits at a time, like we did 15 years ago. So,
sitting in a room over the Christmas holiday, over the Thanksgiving holiday.
yes,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
we had 124 attorneys work on our hospice clients this year. So
hmm
um, we have a lot of help. And so I just think it's everyone has their role on a team. And I think
hmm
knowing what that is, and a challenge I have is sometimes over helping, which can be smothering. um, and like, but I've always really wanted people to not feel alone and not to feel like, because I think a lot of attorneys are pretty obtuse and don't spend a lot of time explaining things. And so I have the tendency to like over explain and over help, which probably on balance is better than like
yeah.
the figure it out. But uh, Mary and Bert both said this to me early on in my career, and I didn't understand it because it felt like that's not right. Not everything needs to be A plus plus. Like, and it's not that we don't need to be doing good work all the time, but it's what energy, match your energy to what this is. And then also I think it is um letting go, like in healthy risk taking. So on my prior podcast, I talk with mental health, and I talk about how I'm working with them on some of the grief related to my loss of my mom. And one of the things I was talking about with Natalie, who's my counselor there, was about healthy risk taking, right? So I think this applies here, which is healthy risk taking means like giving a project to someone. And I can clearly remember Bert saying, just think if they screw it up, how bad could it be? Right. And so, right. And I do think about that. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, there are things like it could be really bad.
Yeah,
And that's,
deadlines.
yeah, deadlines and like it's, significant, whatever. But like that has been a helpful guide for me. But I've had to live into that understanding because I think all the stuff with leadership, I mean, I think it's through observing others, and then also people could tell you all the wisdom, but it has to be lived and like earned wisdom. Like Mary and Bert said a lot of things to me, but I had to live those experiences. So maybe they told me that. And now 15 years later, like, oh, now I get it. And so
Yeah.
I think it's like paying attention to what people are saying. And then again, this gets into being reflective person is like you pull that out from the recesses of your mind and then you're like, oh, this is what that person was talking about all those years ago. And so I do think having Mary and Bert were, I think, reflective people. And what I wanted to tie this to is so, as you know, Brian, I love art. I love making things like of all kinds, whether it's floral arrangements, like drawing, painting, sculpting, like making jewelry, fashion. Like there isn't anything that beauty making doesn't touch. But interesting, Mary and Bert both are artists too. And so Mary and I still talk, and she has become a painter too. And I make my own cards and she makes cards. So like I get a homemade card from her every year with her art. And Bert was also he was into etching. And so both of them did a little bit of that when they were still working, but then really did a lot of that. And so that's cool
Yeah.
that there's that similarity. And maybe there's something about our hidden art, like artisticness attracted to us. But it's weird how Mary and Bert, there's so many parallels in my life to their life, even though it didn't make sense at the time. And you're like,
Yeah.
in the world of 8 billion people or whatever, how did I find two people that like got me and they really cared about me? I mean, Mary and Bert really loved me and that really made a difference. And again, we're just it's really fun when you look back on your life and be like, oh my God. I mean, to your earlier point where this whole thing started is I put myself in a position to be able to have these experiences, but I made the choice to then
Yeah.
do it. Like, the whole thing about freedom, right? I worked hard in school and I did all these things and I checked all these boxes, but then saying yes to experience, yes to things that make you scared, yes to, and then following your gut on the stuff of good people lead you to good things,
Yeah.
right? And so,
We have to
but
be intentional about it. This stuff will not, good things, they could happen to you by happenstance, but I think you've kind of made your world around you by the people who you worked with and decisions you've made. And I think being proactive about your life and making those decisions is a real key to happiness and success. So got
yeah.
to explore that.
And I think too, and this is, I think, often quoted. Maya Angelou said, people are going to remember how you made them feel. And again, that seems like a lived truth to me because our team um, had this nice little teams gathering for me because our team is all across the country at the end of December. And it was so touching. It was a big surprise. Um, and people said things at this, and none of it was really like, "You're such a great lawyer, Meg. You taught me blah, blah, blah." It was like, "This is how you made me feel." And I got this email that I will treasure forever from someone on our team. And it was just like all of these instances about how I connected with her. Like at the retreat, I gave her this big hug and she was really insecure going into this 1,000, attorney firm
Yeah.
retreat. And this person isn't naturally a hugger, but anyone who knows me is I'm a hugger. And so, and then just like when she first started working our team, I spent like an hour with her just to get to know her and all these things that, I mean, they were intentional at the time, but that's sort of who I am. And
Yeah.
so this whole gathering celebration thing, I really felt seen for who I am as a person. And that was more satisfying than anything. Like, you're so smart, even though I wanted for my whole life, like, I want people to think I'm competent and I'm smart and this. And it's almost like I've transcended that. And it is really like, how did I make people feel and how I made a difference and mattered to them in some way? And so that was really, really struck me in terms of like, wow, I spent my life doing something worthwhile.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So Meg, before you kind of depart the practice of law and kind of focus on your other interests, I want to try to gain the benefit of your insight into your experience with hospices and hospice leaders who you've seen come and go and grow and shrink and start and disappear over the years. What have you seen for the keys as the keys of success? So those hospices, those leaders who are out there, what do you think would be things that they could pursue to have that staying power to fulfill their mission and their vision, based on your
Yeah.
experience?
I think it's less about the what and it's more about, because, should I do a palliative care program? Should I do this? Should I do that? And you and I have done board train, like board strategic planning retreats. And I think the question that really lives with me is, what does your community need and meeting that need? And I've seen people do that and it's not always in their lane, but it's like, this is a need. And Kathleen Benton, who is the CEO of Hospice Savannah, I did a podcast with her in our leadership series a number of years ago. And she is a go-getter and really talking about like contagious energy. Like she found a way to like get this funding and she was doing all these COVID vaccines for her community and all this stuff. And one would say, I'm a hospice. I have no business doing this, but it's like there's a need. And then she's a connector. So it's like, connecting with this business who has a place to do all this stuff. And so I think it's like asking what your community needs as opposed to, well, I went to this conference and everyone else is doing this. And so I
Yeah.
must do this. I mean, I think I'm very much a person that I need to be exposed to a lot of inspiration. So this is an artistic way, visually, but like I think the same is going to conferences. I mean, you can get inspiration there, but then you need to have your filter. Like I'm not following the path of everyone else. I'm following, I'm in this community and what does my community need and how can we make that work? And so and maybe that's sort of how thrift stores for hospices, which are sort of ubiquitous now, started because it was like, you know, we work with dying people and their families have all of the stuff that they need to get rid of. And like, maybe that's meeting a need and then it helps support our foundation or, whatever. I have no idea. I'm making that up. But like, that has nothing to do with providing hospice care. Now we're providing a retail outlet, but it was like, it was maybe meeting a need and then it does raise money. And so I think it's starting with a question like that. And then I think all the things we talked about, leadership, of being reflective and what are your values and um are really important. Like those are the skill building I think we need in strong leaders. And I hope we don't lose the well, I think we need business savvy at the executive level. I hope hospice doesn't abandon having social workers as CEOs and chaplains and, people that don't have MBAs, because I think that's a real strength. And I hope we don't, I mean, I feel like we're becoming I've talked about this a lot, our own fiefdom in healthcare. And so, and and that everything that made us special and unique is we're becoming a little vanilla, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so I hope that we keep our weirdness or whatever. What is that? Keep Portland weird or
Right.
whatever that is.
Yep. Yep.
Um, like our counterculture roots, which are approaching problems in a holistic way, as opposed to this profit driven way. Like, how can I make the most money out of doing this stuff? Because I think if you're awesome at what you do, like the money will flow.
Yeah.
I think, now you need to be creative and all these other things. But so, um, I think our strength is in our roots of counterculture, a holistic model of care, and how can we apply that in a different way? And that's why the last podcast I did with mental health was really exciting for me, because I think they're doing something that's counterculture. It's much more direct to consumer. Um, but it has so much of like the roots of hospice that
Uh-huh.
like are awesome in terms of accompanying people through something that is difficult. And accompanying meaning, the nurses accompanying me, the social worker, the chaplain, like, and how we define what we're doing in I think verbs or actions and adjectives that are more evocative of caretaking as opposed
Yeah.
to business mindedness. Like, I think that's why people historically love hospice so much because it made them feel different, right? It
Mhm.
made them feel not like when you go to the hospital, ER, or whatever. And I'm very grateful I can have that experience if I needed. But like, we are different and like how we make people feel and all that stuff. So I think that's really important to our future if, we're going to have a future that is, I think, vital um, and not just like run of the mill kind of stuff.
And so, Meg, uh, I think hospices, they've grown so much over the past 25 plus years. The community, um, they're under unprecedented scrutiny nowadays. I mean, just the kind of work we're doing with audits and enhanced enforcement and the way enrollment is scrutinized and all that. I think there's a lot of pressure, maybe more pressure than ever before on hospices and trying to stay afloat and pleasing all the stakeholders. So, I mean, under this kind of current pressure, what's the ray of hope, or what is it that hospices should kind of look forward to as guiding them through these troubled waters and continuing to provide that great service?
Well, I
Inspire
think, yeah.
us.
Well, I think it's like everything I've already said. I think we stay the course. Like 25 plus. I told you we needed the plus sign because it's been more than 25 years. Um, is like stay the course. So this like this benefit I think is broken in many respects, but care for the people that are eligible. And I get it, these audits, and I don't want to minimize their impact because it is crazy and insane and it is wrongheaded in so many different ways and flawed and all of that stuff. But of all these years of doing this, every big case that we've ever had, we have won. Like we had like when you do the right thing, there's a way through. And when we've given talks on audits, I always say the beginning of the story is not the end of the story, and then sort of and it's painful, but what I don't want to have people do is they just retract back and everything is so knee jerk to like, well, we better discharge this patient because, you know, they hit 6 months and they're not
Yeah.
dead. I mean, there's a reason why there used to be the 210-day benefit limit. Well, the Congress got rid of that and then it became unlimited in light of like, you know, how we die and the unpredictability of that and stuff. And so I know I've been saying this for a lot of years. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't work on good documentation, but if you have a team that you trust and you have a strong compliance program, so you're not just like hoping for the best, like you're actually testing your team, like you're doing internal audits and
Yeah.
testing that. And so you're not blind faith, but like if you're doing those things and you care for the person that happens to live 3 years, that's a good hospice that's still doing that. Now they're pressing, their team to save and document and all that stuff. But I think it's like stay the course, do the work, and just make sure that we're doing it well and have solid people who, all these things that we talked about of what makes a good team and people you can trust and stuff. But then trust the process. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we need advocacy and change, but I just reflect on all of the great victories. And I pause saying great victories because I feel like we never should have had to battle those to
Yeah.
begin with. Um, but we have won those things. And I think we have found a way to win for people doing the right thing. So I think all is not lost. And so I think it's stuff I've been saying for a while, but adopt a mindset of these things are going to happen as opposed to these should be never events. And I know that sounds trite, but I still think you need to build, cash reserves. And, this
Yeah.
is why you need to run a good business. But like these things are going to happen. And you need to know who to call, right? You call, I think we do a great job, and you have your team and you're prepared, and you don't let all of this rocking, you're on the boat, it's going, but you need to be like the steady hand and think about the future, like all the stuff we talked about of like what's on the horizon, what does my community need? Because no one is inspired by hanging on to the last rung and the sky is falling, right? You're
Yeah.
not going to inspire your staff. You're not going to inspire anyone being that way. And so I
Yeah.
think it's like if as leaders you adopt this mindset, like these things are going to happen. I'm the steady hand. I have the team. Like, we've done all this internal auditing. I feel real confident. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're going to get the right result immediately, but I'm going to stay the course. It's a long game kind of stuff. I think that that's sort of the essential mindset. I also think being involved in state and national organizations that are doing advocacy is incredibly, because there are so many flaws in the system and we need to advocate for change. And so I think making your voice heard, but it's not you calling up your senator individually. I mean, I think
Yeah.
collective effort is really important because I just have to believe that, hospice of any care provider out there has the highest customer satisfaction rating out there, and it saves the government money. I mean, there's so much in this narrative. Just you don't need to understand everything we do to see, the value both to people, but also, you know, um, financially about the benefits of this. So I think it's just that's not panic kind of like, and I don't think it's a Titanic, but I think it's hard to do. I mean, you and I have had so many conversations with CEOs, and again, it's stressful. And I think that you and I have gotten great satisfaction by being able to be the steady hand to the steady hand, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've been around this block many a time. Here's like the runway. Here's what's
Yeah.
going to happen. We're going to do this. And then if this doesn't work, because we're 10 steps ahead figuring this stuff out. Like, you know,
It's been very fulfilling when people reach out to you for help and you can say, okay, we got this. We know what this is all about. Here's the situation. And it's a lot of times it's just that information that's going to allow that CEO and leadership to then implement what they need to do with their team and their organization to say, okay, we have a plan. We know how we're going to get through this, whether it's audits or regulatory change or whatever it might be. But that I think has been really rewarding for us to be able to do that. Patience and persistence is what we've always
yeah,
talked about
yes.
with our clients. So, well, Meg, uh, uh, thanks so much for building the team and for this podcast. And although your place as a hospice advocate actively is coming to an end because you're pursuing your best life out there, it's a beginning for me. I'll be doing these podcasts going forward and leading our team into the future. And I only hope that we can sustain the very high standards that you've set. But thanks for all of that. And I'm sure you and I will be talking as I bend your ear on certain tough issues that come up. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, I think there's great promise for the future. And yeah, you'll be the steady hand. If anyone has a steadier hand, can't think of them. Having 8 kids and um Yeah,
Staying
nothing,
sane. Yeah.
nothing stresses you out. I mean, maybe, I don't know your internal life, but you are a steady I mean, that is a great strength of I'm a little, "Woo, woo," but you're like, the
Will.
running line is you've only been mad at me once, except then you say
Right.
you're mad at me many times. But anyway, you are a steady hand and and obviously super smart and talented and all that stuff. But I think, that because there's a lot of um, roadblocks like that
Yeah.
are going to need to be navigated and, that steady hand. And we have so many talented folks on our team, and that it will be fun to see where things go. But yeah,
All right.
I'm calling this volume 2. I'm starting volume 2. It's not a chapter. It's more
Okay.
significant than this. This is volume 2 of
Volume 2.
Meg.
Well,
Yeah.
best of luck to you, Meg. Thanks for everything. And thank everybody for listening. Until next time, take care.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode of Hospice Insights, The Law and Beyond. Thank you for joining the conversation. To subscribe to our podcast, visit our website at hushblackwell.com or sign up wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, take care.